watching Boritzer's bio briefings know that ambulance is not for us or for you. It's on standby. And that's what we're going to talk about today right here at ThinkTech Hawaii. We have a special show dedicated to emergency medical services, not only in Honolulu, but around the world. So welcome everybody. We're going to start off with my special guest today, J. Fidel, impresario par excellence, producer, a grandpapa, and
kibitzer and foil,
and a master of knowledge of everything Hawaiian, Pacific, global. I don't even know.
No, see if you can stump the chump then.
There you go. There you go. And the reason I brought the ambulance with me, because this is going to be a hot show. We're going to be discussing a lot of very touchy subjects, including cardiac subjects, including war subjects, including suicides, all type of things that you love to talk around the coffee table as long as they don't involve you. And so I'd like to start off, first of all, when you see that picture of an ambulance that's behind me on the wall, the real ambulance is standing outside at the entrance to the parking lot over here of the studio, just in case, because we always have these exciting shows that are full of vigor and excitement. You know, politics is really a high blood pressure producing exercise, especially if you're out of the state legislature and trying to discuss what they're doing, because mostly everywhere else they're just sleeping on the job. And I don't think Hawaii is any different than the 49 other states and the main event show in Washington. But EMS, emergency medical services, is something that everybody can agree on. No, not how they function. No, not what they cost. No, not whether they appear or not. Everybody can agree on that we need them. I think everybody would like to know, have that feeling of comfort that if something happens, this is a very Jewish thing, something could happen. What could happen? You could have, what's the most common worry that everybody has? What's the most common ailment that people worry about?
Cirrus.
Cirrus is good. Problems, yes, but medically, I think that doesn't appear in the.
You can have a heart attack.
A heart attack. This is a very American a perspective on emergency medical services. The heart attack. And do you know that most people around the world do not worry about heart attacks? What do they worry about?
Gunshot wounds.
Gunshot wounds, accidents, you know, getting hit by a rock.
We have plenty of gunshot wounds here.
Yes,
too.
I know. No, I wouldn't dispute it. But the reason I started off with the image of a Honolulu ambulance is because almost inevitably when we drive to work or when we come home or when we drive in the streets of Honolulu, we often see an ambulance with a police car and some people standing around and wonder, what could that be? If it's in the traffic, we already know whether, because every traffic intersection has a camera, so everybody knows already on their iPhone if they're going with Waze or anything else, there's an accident. But what often happens is we'll see an ambulance, whether on King Street, whether it's over on Ala Moana Boulevard, and you wonder, what's happening? And as you get closer, and guess what? I have stopped at these events. Not because I am an ambulance chaser, not because I'm a voyeur.
You're looking for guests for the show.
I'm looking for guests who have a story to tell. But inevitably, as you get closer, you'll notice someone lying on the ground. That's the most common thing. You'll see the ambulance attendant lying. You can tell immediately the condition of the patient from the speed with which the ambulance attendant, we should call him an EMS technician or paramedic too, or, you know, more life support technician, and to the speed with which he's moving. If you see him with a lot of junk, excuse the resuscitator, you know, and the intubating tubes and all this, and he's running, you know there's still a chance. If he's not running, there are only two possibilities. Either the person they are coming to pick up is perhaps a homeless person who's fallen asleep, or someone who has drunk on the job of trying to stay awake on the park bench, or someone who's not going to come back with a living. So those are the cases when you don't need the excitement. But often if there's still a chance to resuscitate someone, still bring them back to the living, then you'll see a lot of excitement, people moving around, and so on. So,
well, people like the drama. I mean, it's a bad word, like. and it's Vulturesque somehow, but Schadenfreude, wishing ill on other people. But they stop, they have to gawk, right? And when the whole line of traffic gawks, well, then you got congestion. It's probably better that, the paramedics, do their thing and get on with it and move out of the area so that people don't gawk and congest all the traffic.
So you think there's a lot of this there, but for the sake of God go I?
Yes, and just curiosity. I mean, Schadenfreude may not be the right word, but they really have to know, because if somebody is hurt, you want to know what happened so it doesn't happen to you.
So you think it's also having like a distraction from your normal thing? If you're worried about not having prepared a discussion for a meeting with your boss in the morning, and here's a good distraction. Well, I was delayed by a traffic accident, or I was helping someone who was hit by a car.
That's better than the dog ate my homework.
The dog ate.
But I think part of it also is in the state of Hawaii, everybody knows everybody. It's 1 degree of sanguinity everywhere. And so you want to look over and see, is that somebody I know? Because if that's somebody I know, I got to tell my wife. I got to call my friends. I got to see what happened here. It might be somebody I know. Maybe I should step out of the car and try to help. Who knows?
One of the things in living in Hawaii that we often say, lucky we live Hawaii. Do you think a lot of it is when we see an accident or we see a trauma event, we kind of say, hey, this doesn't belong in this picture. Or this is bad for the tourist business. These things are not supposed to happen to those of us who live in paradise, right? But I think that one of the questions is that I wanted to raise with showing the Honolulu ambulance, because that's probably the least serious of the EMS services that we're going to discuss today. But the reason I'm showing it, because so much energy and money is spent perhaps on the false calls for these ambulance services. And many people don't understand that every time an ambulance goes out, there's a cost to society. There's a cost to the citizenry of maintaining such an ambulance, a high-level ambulance service, and especially we'll talk about the 2 different types of EMS services around the world, and the Anglo-American model, which we use in Hawaii and in New Zealand and Australia and so on, where you have technicians, basically, people who are trained to give life support, but bring the person of interest along, deliver him quickly. The philosophy of let's get him to the emergency room. How often did this concept of the emergency room as the place that will fix everything? And yet we know from our own experiences or experiences of loved ones that the emergency room is not the haven that you're actually delivering the patient to. It's actually a bureaucratic structure, many different vocations, people who are aggregating and perhaps meeting over there, trying to get services, where people's medical and financial records are scrutinized until some form of help.
But wait a minute, the ambulance comes, and the first thing is there really money involved for the person getting in the ambulance? Isn't insurance going to cover that? It's not. Does it fall on the state to have to pay for that ambulance? And if so, when? And the second question comes out of it. I thought that ambulances always go to an emergency room. They are emergency vehicles. Right. Don't they always go to an emergency room? I mean, they don't take you to your primary physician, for goodness sake, because he won't know what to do with you. He's got 2,000 people in his lobby. He doesn't have time for that. So. Doesn't it always go to the emergency room?
Well, we're going to talk about, because it doesn't need to go to the emergency room. And in fact, in half the world, it doesn't go to the emergency room. It actually goes to a specific department that is waiting to accept you in the hospital.
Interesting.
If you're going to the hospital. And that's the Franco-German model. The Germans are always so organisiert. Everything is so organized.
Efficient.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that difference in a minute. So let's look what happens, God forbid, when you get into an ambulance, lying on your back.
Talk about the money. As you come in, do they look for your HMSA card? Would you lie down there? Would you lie down there, Dr. Boritzer, and just give us your HMSA card? And if you don't have that, we'll take Visa. And you say,
You know, I'm not a big fan of tattoos, but I thought that one of the more useful functions of a tattoo with the younger populations and the millennials perhaps would be to tattoo your medical history. Why have all these designs that are so useless and just cover up your body so you don't have to wear clothes?
Chip.
A chip would be even better. There are actually chips. Yes, I know. But here I would think it would just this way. You immediately say, oh, my HMSA card number right here.
That's a bad place to put it.
Yeah. Well, as you put the IV, you immediately see, oh, HMSA looks like a valid number. You scan it with your scanner and bingo.
I think it's almost time to take a break now.
So anyway, I wanted to show you the next one, the next video we have. What happens when you're lying on your back? What's inside the ambulance? Is it like in many countries just a cart with 4 wheels on it? Did you get wheeled in? Someone holds till you get to the emergency room? Let's take a look.
This is EMS1, our primary ambulance. Here in the center we have our gurney. Every single call that we go on, we pull the gurney out, take it with us on scene, and with the gurney we have our 3 more important pieces of equipment. We have our trauma box, our defibrillator, and our airway bag. Go ahead and start with the airway bag. In here we have our oxygen tank, which we can use to provide oxygen to our patients if needed. So pretty much this entire bag is just dedicated to keeping the patient breathing. Coming down here, we have our defibrillator, where we can slap the pads onto a patient who's in full arrest and shock him back. Finally, at the end, we have our trauma box. Trauma box is kind of everything else that we need. And pretty much with this, we could stop any type of bleed that was needed. And here in the rest of the ambulance is pretty much the same equipment that you see on the gurney. We just use this to restock the gurney. So with this, we can just run 5, 6, even more calls back to back to back without having to come back to the station.
You're watching Dr. Rafi Boritzer right here on Boritzer's Bio Briefings. My guest, Fidel, impresario, producer, and project developer of ThinkTech Hawaii, the channel you're watching us on. What I want to talk about today are the different places in the world. We're going to have a special show actually devoted to American emergency medical services with a focus on Hawaii when we have a representative of the EMS service in Honolulu. But I want to talk about what happens in other places. The expectations that the average American, when he's traveling, is that the EMS service he recognizes with the orange on a white background and the lights and the siren sounds, even down to the wail for the different for police and fire and ambulance, is the same type of service he's going to get anywhere. One of the things we hear about, you know that we integrate all of our shows, something to do with other places that are not necessarily Hawaii, and we try to integrate with current events, political current events. One of the big things, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the politics of one of our neighbors, Thailand. Politics now are very violent. They've been dragging like this for the past 4 or 5 years since they've had political regimes that have divided the country between the monarchists or city people and those that are tilling the land and actually producing the value of most of Thailand's agriculture and farmland, and actually the poor people of the country. And they've been locked into almost a Marxist type of conflict for the last 4 or 5 years, with the previous prime minister fled the country before he was arrested. He's living in the United Arab Emirates. His sister got elected and she's running the country, and many people are unhappy with that result as well. But the point is that it's produced many casualties, consistent conflict inside the cities primarily, taking over the airport, attacking the government buildings. I want to give you a view of what happens when you get hurt in a country like Thailand, whether you've been hit by a vehicle, which is very, very possible in Bangkok. If you've tried to navigate the streets in Bangkok, especially Constitution Square, where the streets are sometimes 8 to 12 lanes wide, and if you miss the light on this one, you are in bad trouble. So it's just, I remember that when I lived in Bangkok, I had my motorcycle with me, and I'd always tried to get at the red light right in the front of the 20 or 30 motorcycles that were ready to go in front of the vehicles. And as the light changed, bingo, I popped into the first gear. The wheel lifted up and I was gone. And then about 30 or 40 scooters or 250cc Hondas are chasing behind me, all trying to get ahead of the four-wheelers, because the four-wheelers are killers and they can get you. It doesn't mean that the two-wheelers aren't going to get you as well if you're in the front and so on. So there's always a potential. When we get back, I'll show you what happens when some of these dangers come together.
I'm Hong Jiang, host for Asia in Review on Tuesdays.
And I'm David Day, host for Asian Review on Thursdays. Both of us broadcast our respective shows at 4 p.m.
And my topics tend to deal with questions related to environment, culture, history, and sometimes human rights.
And my shows tend to be on international business, foreign policy, geopolitics, and national security. And you can watch our shows live on the ThinkTech website at thinktechhawaii.com.
And you can also watch us on YouTube or Olalo.
So come join us on Thursdays at 4 p.m. I'm David Day.
And on Tuesdays at 4 p.m., I'm Hong Jiang.
Aloha.
Aloha.
We are back. We're talking about ambulances, emergency medical services, conflict around the world, and how their societies deal with the injuries and deaths, etc. So let's watch Bangkok Ambulance Diary and get an idea what's happening.
It's all on in Thailand at the moment, and if you're planning a quick holiday to Thailand, you might want to put that on hold. Our embassy there has closed today. Foreign Affairs advise only go if it's essential travel. That's, of course, because of the mayhem at the moment in Bangkok, a city in crisis, as the anti-government protesters take over the streets. Already around 30 people have been killed in these violent clashes. Last night, a rebel army general, he was shot, critically wounded. And on the front line is a Kiwi called Marco Cunningham. He's a volunteer ambulance officer helping the wounded and dying. And Robin James went to Bangkok to meet him.
So many accidents every single day.
Russia, central Bangkok.
Police are very reluctant to give way to a rescue vehicle. They even cut in front of you here.
Yeah, well, this guy's trying to get past us.
We've even had people come out and attack the ambulance.
After 10 years on the job, it seems nothing phases Kiwi Marco Cunningham.
I had my ambulance shot. Got a bullet hole in my old ambulance, which I sold now, and I've had a gun pointed at me by a drunken policeman.
With Bangkok in a state of emergency, the volunteer crew he normally works with is out of action. The Red Cross is coordinating these rescues.
No one.
This woman is one of the protesters.
She's a red shirt. She was attacked by a yellow shirt.
For nearly 2 months, this has been Marco's life, responding to whatever the protests throw at him. The night before we filmed, 3 people were killed in bombings here.
Oh, it was really like a war zone. Yeah, there was police and army everywhere. And
he was there 2 weeks ago picking up the pieces as well, when 25 were killed in riots.
when you're doing your job, you don't really think too much about it. Yeah, it's in the back of your mind, of course, all this gunfire, but you know, you're concentrating on the guy who's been injured on the floor. And
tonight, there's a relative state of calm.
this is the front line right here, and this is where the bombs went off, just over the other side. You can see they're very, very organised in everything they do. They've got their own ranks of people, and they've got their own army.
We've come to the Red Shirts' fortified base. It may look rudimentary, but the tyres are supposedly soaked in petrol.
You can't see the guns that are hidden, but there's guns around, and bombs and all kinds of stuff.
The anti-government protesters have paralysed central Bangkok. They're well organised, bankrolled by the ousted Prime Minister. With plenty of food and water, they're not going anywhere willingly.
You can see by the intricate barricades they've made up there, they're here to stay.
On the other side of the road, the police, army and government supporters.
Yeah, up here, hidden behind these black screens, are all the army with guns, apparently with live ammunition. And they've all got live ammunition.
McDonald's bears the riot scars. It's closed now, like many businesses.
I guess it's going to have to come to a head sometime.
It's a waiting game that Marco and his team are getting sick of playing. Normally, life as a volunteer with Ruam Katanyu Foundation is non-stop action.
Saving someone's life is obviously the ultimate thing you can do.
In Bangkok, the ambulance...
Welcome back. You're watching Boritzer's Bio Briefings right here at ThinkTech Hawaii with ThinkTech Hawaii's impresario, J. Fidel, sitting next to me and graciously agreeing to prod my memory into some events which I've been trying to forget over the last 25 years.
I'll do what I can, Rafi.
Okay, you know, all these ambulance trips, and some of you may wonder what expertise I possibly could have in ambulances. And the truth of the matter is, I was the Director General of the Emergency Medical Services in Tel Aviv years ago. This was one of my first headline jobs. I didn't realize what headline meant. It meant I was awake 24 hours a day. And it was very strange because at that time they did not have telephone services that you could just call. A telephone company was run by the government. And so when I was appointed to the job, I lived in Tel Aviv, and I thought I'd have a telephone. Now that I was a member of the critical strategic safety and disaster management team, that at that time included Moshe Dayan, the Minister of Defense, and so on, I thought, hey, I'm entitled to a telephone. I was told that I could not get a telephone, and I would have to sleep with a two-way radio, a small walkie-talkie next to my bed. So till 11 o'clock, I would have to keep the walkie-talkie next to my bed. Obviously, this didn't do wonders for my family and marriage life at that time. And
the walkie-talkie makes squawk sounds all the
right,
way through.
And there was, and I always had to listen to when they called number one. I was number one. So number one was, in those days, we had a lot of terrorist attacks, and number one was always called in the middle of the night because 1 o'clock, at 11, I would shut the walkie-talkie off, and then they would send a police car to get me if there was an emergency, so they wouldn't have to wake me up. So I got
it's tough to be number one.
Number one is tough, but it was better than being number two. Trust me, my assistant always said that. But in any case, so this is how I got familiarized with ambulances, emergency medical services. And I'd like to bring some of those reminiscence and perhaps reflections on today's ambulance services to you. We talked about some of what you saw in the film about Thailand, the emergency medical services in Bangkok under these difficult situation, political conflict, and violence that are the common day occurrences in Bangkok. I'd like you to look at something more positive and something that I also experienced firsthand, and that is the ambulance services in Mumbai. When I first came to Mumbai in 1993, there were no ambulance services run by the government. Actually, it was run by the St. John's Society. It's one of these English type of voluntary organizations. And if you were lucky enough to know someone, you could call for an ambulance. Otherwise,
that's nice.
The ambulance service in Mumbai, a city of several million people, was that you either had someone take you with a rickshaw to the hospital or you took a taxi, no matter what. So they've come a long way, and I would like you to see this film, a short film about the ambulance service in Mumbai today.
The dial 1298 for ambulance service, based in Mumbai, India, provides emergency medical services for anyone in need, including the poorest residents of the city. It charges those who can afford to pay, while subsidizing its rates for low-income customers. Its advanced life support ambulances contain sophisticated medical equipment that can help to save the lives of patients. The problem is that this equipment, including defibrillators, suction machines, ventilators, and syringe pumps, requires a lot of power to keep running, draining the ambulance's batteries. After completing a call, ambulances often have to drive around to recharge the battery, wasting expensive gasoline in the process. This isn't the only cost incurred.
The major issue of downtime of ambulance is the power. So we were always thinking actually what could be the alternate power system.
1298 is now experimenting with an innovative approach to cutting costs. Solar panels placed on the roof of one of its ambulances.
the power in the battery is about 50% or like sometimes 30%. So driver has to just go make a round. So you're using the fuel to charge the battery. So the solar panel is there. So solar panel, what it does is like it is charging the battery. If it is a station in the vehicle, it charges to 100%. After the 100% power, the solar shuts off. The inverter shuts off the battery charging. So we don't have to roam around the vehicle for charging the battery. That's the best thing actually with the solar panel. Yeah.
See, anything that says fuel and energy is important in India because, you know, like it's basically fuel, energy and fuel is something where the cost is going up. And now if you can find an alternate way, you know, to conserve that energy and use sunlight or use solar panels to run an ambulance, it'll be great. It's only going to benefit us and also going to benefit the environment. So there is nothing wrong in trying it. In fact, if it works, we're going to make all our ambulances working on solar panels.
By reducing maintenance downtime and saving fuel, this solar panel could pay for itself in a short period of time. After 3 months of testing, the service will decide whether to go ahead with solar panel installation on the rest of its fleet. If successful, this innovative use of new technologies will further reduce costs, allowing 1298 to offer better service to the poorest while generating environmental benefits. A winning solution for everyone in Mumbai.
Briefings right here. And J. Fidel, my guest today. We're talking about ambulance service, emergency medical services, and the impact on society and what different societies do to deal with picking up accident victims, victims of violence in the streets, people who have cardiac arrest, whatever you could possibly imagine that requires immediate medical attention or transport. And we talked about the violence in Bangkok, and actually, that's when it really counts. It's one thing to have a cardiac arrest and be able to take someone in your vehicle immediately to the emergency room even before help gets there. But what do you do when you are in a predicament, when there's violence in the streets? And to emphasize that point, every country that we see on the front pages of the news, whether it's in Ukraine, whether it's in the West Bank, whether it's in Israel, whether it's in Bangkok, whether it's in India or in China, everywhere we always see the almost unceasing traffic of ambulances, police cars, and so on. We see tragedies, we see landslides. Something else that we forgot all about was the violence we saw in the Arab Spring in Cairo, on Tahrir Square, where people camped in the million. And forget about just the sanitary needs of 1 million people coming to demonstrate their desire for the Arab Spring, which turned out to be such a sadly lacking in terms of being accomplished, in terms of being finished in their mission. But let's take a look at the Arab Spring, what it meant if you actually got hurt in the demonstrations.
لو سمحت بعد اذنك يا كده يا جماعه الرفيق لو سمحت مين اللي معانا.
While the Kardashians may give you a reality show from New Jersey every week on your television, we just bring you the reality show in the streets of the rest of the world. You're watching Boritzer's Bio Briefings right here at ThinkTech Hawaii. We'll be back after a minute of station identification.
I'm Jay Fidel. That's Sharon Moriwaki of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. And every Wednesday we have Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. We've been doing it for some time now, and we have some fantastic guests on there, unbelievable guests who give us insight into what is going on in a very complex, sometimes very confusing, sometimes very disappointing area of progress in the state. So we love doing this. We love meeting them. We love talking to them. We love having their ideas out on the table. So maybe, just maybe, we can all make some sense of what's going on. Sharon, what do you think?
I think that's absolutely correct. We enjoy ourselves meeting with all these people and hearing about the energy and the state of clean energy, and hopefully we advance clean energy for the state. So it's terrific. Join us.
Okay, it's every Wednesday. Okay, Wednesday is Energy Day. Every Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, here on ThinkTech Hawaii. We'll see you there.
You're watching Boritzer's Bio Briefings on ThinkTech Hawaii channel. My name is Dr. Rafi Boritzer. We're talking about ambulances, emergency medical services, and my reminiscences in the field, in healthcare, in emergency medical services in Israel and other places. And what I'd like to tell you a little bit about the structure. We said there are two different kinds of structures. There's the structure of the Anglo-American model, get the patient as quickly as you can into the emergency medical emergency room, emergency medical services center in the hospital, and so on. The other model, the Franco-German model, actually doesn't want to take you to the, there is no emergency room as such. They make arrangements prior to stabilizing you even by determining your diagnosis, where you're going to get treated in the hospital. So if it's orthopedics, internal medicine, surgery, they make the arrangements. Why? Because in their ambulances, they actually have an emergency services physician. Okay, they don't depend upon the paramedic. The physician already there is able to make the call, if not directly on hand, by radio, based on feedback from the sensors that the patient is attached to. So you don't tie up with endless hours of waiting in the emergency room until it's decided how to deal with the triage that you need. Where are you going to go?
Isn't that infinitely more efficient?
It works, but it depends upon the funding. It depends upon the training system. It depends upon all kinds of services.
They can make mistakes and put you in the wrong direction.
Right.
They'd be wasting hours over there.
Right. I think that the American medical system, the way it's set up, where you have technicians until you get to the professionals, is based on a certain kind of conception of how things, in terms of the division of labor in America, is. And in the rest, in the Anglo-German model, they don't want to waste space. They don't want to lengthen the period that you're going to be waiting or being attended to. So a doctor is already deciding at the beginning, someone who is a specialist in emergency medicine, where exactly you should be going.
It sounds like a better idea. I mean, once in a while they must make a mistake, but you know, I think the basic triage at the ambulance level is probably more efficient.
Yeah, it all depends really who do you want to make the decisions and what do you do. You see, because actually the way the EMS, emergency services, function is whether it's under the public safety, like the sheriff, the police, which is the American model, or the fire department, or it's under the physician's directions, which is the Germanic French model.
Isn't this really a medical thing?
It's a funding thing. It's a funding thing. Who gets the money? It's all follow the money. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in America. Follow the money. So on that happy day, let me show you the Israeli model. when we're going to run a short video of Magen David Adom, where actually, like in many countries, emergency services are run by the Red Cross, the Red Crescent, in Israel's case, the Red Star of David. Magen David Adom. So why don't we run that video?
We're driving out to an 88-year-old who is experiencing chest pains, so we're going there to check it out.
מגן דוד השלום, אנה. בסדר?
A young lady appears to be unconscious. We don't know yet what's her condition.
It's not that we're training our people only. We are trying to train the population. If we had more first responders in the community, then I know that we can save more lives. What you have to do in order to gain control of a mass casualty incident, we're going to give you tools so you can save more lives. We get in Tel Aviv metropolitan approximately 300 calls in 24 hours. You can imagine how stretched we are. If we could get more help, then we would be able to do much more.
We are going to an accident on the road. We had a report of 3 wounded. 2 of them are okay. 1 of them is not so good. ירד. שמי. מה קרה, גברת?
אתם מגיעים? כן. שנייה, דקה. שנייה, עוד לא סעלה, בוא נראה סלמת. תבין? הוא פה. מה שלומך החמוד? כן? מדבר עברית? איזה יופי. בן כמה?
After the death of my father and my sister, I don't want to ever be in a situation where there's someone next to me who needs help and I can't do anything. It's amazing to see how Madda is working now with their equipment and everything, and to think that my father had a big piece in it is, that's what pushed me.
We've been watching a video of the Israel Emergency Medical Services, and I just was discussing during the break with Jay, why can't every country have the quality of care that we see in this particular clip? And the reason is that Israel is a small country, 8.2 million people, small in size, the size of Rhode Island, and jurisdictionally, there are not many agencies, there are not many jurisdictions that have control of the money, the services, the demand, and the support of voters and so on.
Not too much bureaucracy. Then.
Right. Obviously, when you have 3 layers of bureaucracy, local, state, and federal, as in America, it gets much more complex in terms of who pays for what kind of services are given, who is in charge of those services. One of the things we mentioned is it the police that's in public safety that's in charge of the ambulance service, or is it the fire department, or is it the municipality, or even medical centers?
Just on a logic basis, though, isn't it better to have the medical community run the ambulances?
It would be, but you have to have a lot of agreement. You have to have a fairly cohesive society, and I think I want to show you the command center that has made it possible for Israel actually to command the emergency medical services to such a high degree that they can make a difference in the outcomes. Number 8, please.
This is our new Magen David Adom National Disaster Management Dispatch. It's a big vehicle that's built only for us, for Magen David Adom, and it's one of a kind. Here, the vehicle is split to 2 places. Here's the dispatch. This is the manager, okay? And he can control everything. If there is a big earthquake, a big fire, or multi-casualties injuries, we're taking this vehicle and transfer it to the area of the disaster, and it can replace every dispatch in the country, including the national dispatch of Magen David Adom that you saw in Kiryat Ono. Here we have, this is our tool table. Every line here is active injury or everything. We have the maps and the ambulances. Every ambulance, as you can see, has a GPS unit. So I as a dispatch can say where every ambulance and every call from a patient or someone who is injured in the house or in the in the big multi-casualties, I can see it here. I can see every vehicle and motorcycles. You have seen our first responder motorcycles? Like that. Everyone has a GPS unit, so I can know where or who will be the first team on the round. We have telephones, we have cell phones, we have a radio. Arrived to the scene, we're talking to the dispatch. Hello, I'm Irene from the vehicle. Can you please tell me what happened? They're telling us every event or what vehicle, how many vehicles. We can see it on this screen. Okay, so I can see from the manager, I can see who and when will be arrived, how many intensive care units, how many ambulances, how many first responders are on the way. I can take control of every dispatch in the country. Tomorrow, a rocket hits Yarkon region. We're taking this vehicle and put it around and near to the station. All the dispatchers are moving to work from here. The second part is the conference room. It's taking about half an hour to open all the vehicle and to upload all the systems. Okay? This is a touch screen. Here I can see everything, like the weather, okay? Like the wind, how fast is the wind, or to where the wind is going. Maybe in a big fire, we can't stay in the smoke of the fire, okay? So we're upside down. Here is all of the system, what's working, what's not working. We have a satellite. If there is no network like cellular phones or mirrors, we open up the satellite, and it works about 72 hours with only satellite control. Whether we talked, this is the air conditioning. Everything is controlled by here, by the touch screen, or from the smaller This is our video conference. We have a camera to every dispatch, to the general director. All the big managers of Magen David Adom, the general director, Professor Shenar, are supposed to sit here in the multi-casualties and to provide an information. How many casualties, how many blood they have. We have a big camera upstairs, so the resolution of this camera is very, very big and very, very good. We can stand in about 2-3 kilometers from the event, and we can see it in every screen that you have seen. We have already here is our television. Okay, so we can hear news or when something came up, and all the screens are filmed over there. And outside, to police, to fire department, they can come and see how many casualties were evacuated or taken to the hospital, and that's it, I think.
We thank you for having been with us on the special editions of Boritzer's Bio Briefings, Emergency Medical Services. My guest has been J. Fidel. You're watching a ThinkTech Hawaii channel. Until next time, this is Rafi Boritzer. Be here or not.